How is the Republican Party planning to protect the country from the most radical agenda ever offered up by a president? Well, joining me now, our good friends, Republican Congressman of Georgia, Jody Hice. Also joining us, Republican Congressman of Texas, Brian Babin. Congressman, welcome to the both of you.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Congressman Hice, let me start with you. What do you think Mitch McConnell is doing here, and what's the end game?
Well, yeah, I totally agree with you, Grant, that how can you impeach someone who's no longer in office? So the whole premise of this is fishy. But keep in mind that McConnell is no longer in the majority. He does not have the authority to determine what comes on the Senate floor for a vote. And the reality is, if this is going to take place, to delay it is helpful, not only to the Trump legal team, but every day that passes by, we are seeing more and more evidence that the whole activity that took place on the 6th was a coordinated effort. This was not something that just happened spur of the moment with the president speaking. There were people who showed up with tear gas and all sorts of weapons. This was coordinated. So every day that type of information comes out more clearly, which of course helps. And, you know, obviously also, I'm sure my colleague Brian Babin would agree, we have learned here in the House that the Senate cannot walk and chew gum at the same time. So the more they delay this, the more they delay it, the more they're delaying confirmations that Joe Biden would want to get past the Senate.
Well, and that gets me to my next point. And Congressman Babin, you know, Jody Hice raises a great point here. There's work the American people want to get done. I'm not sure we want any work coming out, no offense, of the House of Representatives or the Senate controlled by the Democrats. But certainly this impeachment sham 2.0 is not what the American people want them working on, Congressman Babin.
Absolutely not. I mean, this couldn't come at a worse time. The House rushed it through, no witnesses, no due process. And in fact, this was actually impeachment 2.0, as you mentioned. This president has been subjected to that much persecution. And as far as Mitch McConnell goes, and Jody said it, he's no longer the majority leader. And, you know, he's just gotten reelected for 6 more years. And awful strange that he never turned down and really appreciated the president coming on and endorsing him in his election. And so it's a little bit, I don't know. It just makes me wonder why he is rushing to judgment here as well and joining the Democrats. And the Democrats keep continuously talking about unity, and yet they demonize all of us who are Trump supporters. There were 74 million plus people who supported President Trump, and they're not going away. And to drag President Trump through this charade another time when he's not even in office anymore is doing a grave disservice to our great republic. And I think it's disgusting.
Well, I agree with you, and I would say Mitch McConnell certainly is ungrateful, because I'm not even sure he wins his race in Kentucky without President Trump's support there. Jody Hice, I'm curious to you. You've been around this game a long time. They look like the demilitarized zone in Washington, D.C. for what turned out, and I told everybody, no reason at all. I mean, there was no violence whatsoever on behalf of conservatives, not even one protester that I saw. When does the military up and leave Washington? I mean, they're still camping out there now.
Well, they need to leave soon. I mean, it is really sad to see their presence this powerful, this strong, this overbearing in Washington, D.C. It certainly does not look like a free country, but it is indicative, I believe, of what the Democratic Party is trying to do to us. And, you know, they are trying to cram socialism down our throat. And the reality, and people need to understand this, I think the American people do understand this, that socialism, radical left-wing socialism, and free-loving people, the two philosophies cannot coexist. And it's an overwhelming show of power and a cramming down the throat of the American people to have this type of military presence in Washington, D.C., and it's very likely just the beginning of more to come.
Yeah. It sure looks like it. Congressman Babin, I'll give you the last word here. What do you and Jody and your fellow strong Republicans there do in Washington now to push back against Nancy Pelosi and a Senate that's controlled now by the Democrats? What's the plan of attack? And as I said, I'll give you the last word.
Well, thank you, Grant. Really appreciate you having us on. You know, as a former guardsman myself, to see 25,000 National Guard troops up here, I'm going to have to chime in after Representative Heiss. It's hard to figure what are the Democrats afraid of. Why would they have this? More people are standing around here than are stationed overseas and in Afghanistan, for goodness sakes. And as far as pushing back on the Democrats, I would love to. There's so many things that we could be doing for the American people now, and yet on day one, we've seen President Biden making executive orders to turn around Trump policies that were so good for America, good for American taxpayers, for prosperity, for health and securing our border, public health, you name it, all around. And on day one, he erases the Keystone Pipeline, and I represent more refineries and petrochemical facilities than anybody else in this country, and this is going to be a real killer for us. And we just have to push back as hard as we can. We've got a very narrow difference between the Democrats and the Republicans in the House this time, and I think we're going to be able to pick off Democrats, especially those that are in Texas, and fight back against these types of reversals.
I agree with you, and as I told everybody at the beginning of the show, now is the time to be bold, persevere, and know that there is brightness on the horizon, because out of these kind of times comes good, and we'll come out of this wiser, and I know we can do it. Just keep up the fight up there, men, please. Jody Heiss, Brian Babin, thank you both for coming on.
Thank you, Grant.
Thank you, Grant.